Hello everybody, this is Klint Macro, Vice President of Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. And I'm here in New York City standing before the Statue of Liberty. I got to tell you, as we approached on the boat, it was quite emotional, and it really helped me reflect and appreciate being a citizen of this great country, standing before the statue, and it happens to be on the 250th anniversary of America. And it reminded me that we need to be civically active. So make sure you get to the polls and vote in November. Want to get all of your gun-owning friends registered to vote and get into the polls. We need to show up in force. We're 2 Senate seats away from losing a pro-gun majority in the Senate in Pennsylvania, and we do not want to turn into Virginia next year. So this is Klint Macro of FOAC Institute, and I hope to see you guys at the polls. Happy America 250.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Macro. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
This episode of Meet the Pressers is made possible with the generous support of
Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, this is Klint Macro and Matt Mallory with Meet the Pressers. Meet the Pressers is a safe place for trigger pressers to congregate and talk about guns, gear, gadgets, lawsuits, political activism, training, you name it, anything that's 2A related. So we have 2 very special guests here that my esteemed colleague, Matt Mallory, is going to introduce.
Yes, and speaking of lawsuits, Klint, we've got one here in the bright state of New York where the government likes to come in and kick you in the nuts when you're down. We're going to discuss how the New York State likes to infringe. Demetrio and his attorney, Kevin O'Brien, and we're going to discuss New York State and they're bringing a hammer down on him. I can see the stress in his face right here. Demetrio, welcome. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's really important to get this out because what's happened to Demetrio is nothing short of tragic, and it could happen to almost anybody who's a gun owner here in New York. So it's very important to get this story out.
Well, I was telling Rob Pincus, who introduced us, which thank you, Rob. Yep. And I was telling him the other day that, not that I was leery to do this interview, but I got a phone call from an investigator in the New York State Police Department saying that they needed to talk to me about my FFL. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what this is about. And I'm thinking, I reach out to my ATF IOI and, she's just like, yeah, I don't see nothing. They didn't call us. We don't, nothing. And so I'm just like still pondering what that's all about and still waiting to see. But, a week later, I haven't heard back from him after calling him 3 times. So, who knows? But that's the lovely state of New York, how they, I see his head shaking.
Well, just so happens, Matt, there's a lawyer here that could probably help you if that turns into something horrible.
I hope that it does not, but yeah, good to know people, right? For sure. So give us go ahead, Clint.
Give us the quick breakdown of exactly what the situation is.
Well, I'll let Demetrio kind of tell you how he became involved in this, and then I'll kind of give you my legal take on it, because it's one of the most shocking cases from a punishment standpoint that the Albany County District Attorney's Office is trying to put on Demetrio. But I'll let you start off, Demetrio, and kind of tell your story about how we got here.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. And thank you both for allowing us to come here and talk about this too. It's absolutely important people understand what's going on. So this allegedly started out of an NYPD unit or a Queens DA unit that is collecting eBay purchases of anyone who lives in New York State. Somehow that list is making it just being distributed to other departments throughout the state and local agencies, and then we're not really sure how, but they're determining who to go after selectively. And we understand it may have been people with criminal histories that they were going after. or with previous gun convictions and like that. I certainly don't have any of those. I've no criminal history whatsoever. So I'm not really sure how my name made it to that eBay list. Regardless, they end up getting warrants for my Google accounts. The initial investigation lasted over 14 months and didn't really have much going on. And then 2 months after that, I was arrested. I was pulled over after I dropped my children off at school. A lot of guys in undercover vehicles with guns pointed at me, pulled me out of the car, took me to my home immediately. They had warrants for 3 properties. They took me into the home. I opened my safes, opened my closets, unlocked doors, turned off alarms for them, and they began to then take my firearms out. I was there for that, and nobody really talked to me. I wasn't allowed to make any phone calls. Nobody's really telling me what was going on other than this. It was just about my firearms. I wasn't belligerent with them. I was completely cooperative, honest, opened my doors for them. And they made comments, to family members that were here while they were executing the search warrants, and to me, that they knew I wasn't violent, and that's why they didn't kick in my door. They knew I wasn't, going to do anything, and that's why they just stopped me on the road and not kick my door in at 6 a.m. Then I had a different attorney at the time who they had made comments to that they knew I was a good guy. But this was out of their hands, whatever that meant. And then even after they acknowledged that they knew I was not a criminal, that I had no criminal history, but they continued then to visit federal agencies and try to get them to pick up the case, and they all denied it. So it ended up just typically, if you see these cases, or if you notice, a lot of these cases like mine involve several federal and state agencies. It would be HSI, NYPD, ATF, and the state police or local sheriff's departments or city departments, things of that nature. It's never just one agency, right? No one wanted anything to do with my case. So that in itself, is very strange. Then they kind of started using lawfare against me, putting stories out in the media that weren't true. Some of them are still up online, that I was trafficking or that I was being investigated for trafficking, and it was a year-long investigation, that it stemmed out of a traffic stop, and they found a gun in my console and then subsequently raided my homes and found these guns. That's just not what happened. But that's the story that everyone was getting blasted with. Every couple of months they would put it out again. More recently, they're putting out like wrong court dates on local news. It's in an effort to, I think, obviously scare other people, but to create psychological pressure on me as well. And the whole case itself just has, and I don't know how much we can get into here, but it has a lot of really highly concerning elements that I think would terrify people.
A couple. I'm sorry that you're going through this, and just in full disclosure, I'm a part-time police officer here in New York State, and I see stuff like that. I mean, when I pull somebody over, I'm usually say 2 things. I want to see 2 infractions, 2 equipment violations, or something to that extent, something V&T related before I make that. Because I don't want to infringe on somebody. Yeah, everybody's got tinted windows, and everybody could be pulled over for that. Everybody speeds, everybody goes a couple miles per hour over, 10, 12 miles per hour over, right? I mean, that's just how it is. So for me to pull everybody over that's got tinted windows is kind of ludicrous, and I'd have my day full.
Yeah.
So, everybody breaks the law at some level is kind of how I, look at it. And unfortunately, it sounds, my first thought was, are you running for political office? Is this a vendetta? That's like the first thing that came to mind is like, why are they targeting you in this sense? And a good indicator, like you had mentioned, and maybe Kevin can allude to this a little bit better based on, knowing the case. No other agency is going to pick this case up. That's a clue right there that they're grabbing for straws, right? Like I pull somebody over here and earbuds in their ears. The local DA is going to be like, we got more important things to do than charge somebody with that. It's at some point you let the smaller things fall off the rolls, and you go for the bigger fish. You're not a bigger fish.
Yeah, it's
The initial
it's one of those
was purchasing on eBay.
Exactly, and everything that he purchased was legal. There was nothing illegal about any of his purchases, but it put him on some list that made him a target. And I think one of there's a lot of concerning things here, but perhaps one of the most concerning things, and Matt kind of just alluded to it. If you follow somebody, if you watch somebody, you're going to see them making minor infractions or some sort of illegality over a period of time.
Yep.
In Demetrio's case, that simply isn't true. In this case, they were investigating him from sometime, I believe, in August of 2023, all the way through January of 2025, surveilling him and watching him, frankly, in a creepy way. And they did not find anything that they put in the warrant that constituted any sort of illegality. They were suspicious, but they did not find anything that was directly illegal that Demetrio was doing. And to your larger point about whether he's running for office or something about this feels very personal, in the fact that they are going after him, because I've been a defense attorney for most of my career, and I've been practicing for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. There's no misrepresentation in what Demetrio is saying. He has never had any violent history. He's never threatened anybody. He's never hurt anybody. He hasn't sold drugs. He hasn't sold guns. He hasn't done anything. And Matt, you may know this as a police officer, but a lot of times before sentencing, a person who's accused will go and meet with probation, and they'll give a recommendation as to what they think the sentence should be. And, they're fairly pro law enforcement and typically on the side of the district attorney's office. They met with Demetrio for well over an hour. They looked at him as a person, and they recommended that he be put on probation, which I don't think would be appropriate anyway. But the Albany County DA's office, the best offer with all of those facts that I just laid out, and they are undisputed, has been 8 years. 8 years in state prison as a violent felony offender, which he would serve 85% of that time as a young man with children and a wife and a very good job where he's a contributing member of our community. It's despicable as far as I can tell. And I can't put it all together what the motivation is.
Something that's coming to my head here is defamation of character for sure. I mean, if they're posting stuff on the internet, that's definitely, if everything settles out, I definitely think you should sue for that, slandering your name and such. But Kevin, you know this term, the fruit of the poisonous tree. To me, it seems that if they're getting a search warrant based off information that's not valid, and then they get any evidence, like we were talking about earlier, everybody's got something in their closet that's minuscule, usually not dead bodies, but something that it could be something you could be charged with. That can all be thrown out in court because fruit of the poisonous tree. If they false pretenses, they're getting something to get the warrant, and then under that warrant they find something that's illegal, even, right? Like you pull somebody over illegally and then you find a gun in the trunk and you do a search illegally without permission, without probable cause, without any other reason. Somebody's not pounding on the trunk saying let me out, exigent circumstances, then the gun can be thrown out in court. It's right. I mean,
Well,
what am I missing?
that's what we would hope. And my law partner that's how we became involved with Demetrio. They hired us to write the motions on this case.
Mhm.
And I'm not a great writer, but my partner is, and he did an excellent job here. And it was very concerning because we put these motions, attacking the warrant, attacking the search, all of these things in front of the judge, and a lot of it just wasn't answered. We did not get any hearings in this case but for a Huntley hearing, which are the statements that Demetrio made. And frankly, that wasn't the crux of the case. So we didn't even get a chance to challenge the warrant, other than through our motions, through a hearing or anything like that prior to. And now we're looking square at a trial that starts in 13 days. And, I don't agree with the law at all, but we're walking into a very tough situation for Demetrio that, frankly, if we're unsuccessful, which is likely, if I'm being honest, based on the terrible laws that we have here in New York, he could be going away for a very long time, more than a decade, for sure. I think his exposure is like 20 or 25 years. And this is a gentleman who, again, it seems so crazy to me. He's done nothing that's harmed anybody else. I've had clients in the same court who have shot at cars with people in them, and they've been given probation or they've been given another chance or some sort of diversion. And with Demetrio, who really, I mean, he could be any one of our neighbors. They want to put him in a cage, and it makes no sense to me. And part of the DA that came in here in Albany County, he came in the beginning of 25, was to kind of change some of the bad practices of the previous administration, and he seems to be on board with this. And I truly, I can't understand it. Like, if they said, you know, they think he should be convicted or prevented from owning guns, again, I wouldn't agree with it, but I could see where they were coming from. But the idea that we should separate him from his family, from his work and his community, for doing nothing that impacts anybody else is absolutely insane to me. And that's part of why we're talking to people. I would never talk to somebody with my client in the face of trial. But right now, the story is too big. The problem is too large for us to tackle without some support from the public.
Well, I look at it as the four horses of your apocalypse. I interviewed George Zimmerman years ago, and I came up with the four horses of your apocalypse from that interview. And you got criminal, civil, mental, and jury of public opinion. And you're going through the criminal aspect of it. The civil aspect of it is not exist. You have a victimless crime. I mean, it's a government going after somebody that then there's no other person that's agreed, so civil's not going to be in this. You are definitely having sleepless nights, right? You're having that loss of stability and mindset and peace of mind. So you've got to be able to go for the jury of public opinion. So that's what we're trying to do here, is get the word out to see how ludicrous this is. It's insane. So what did they ultimately charge him with that they obviously, fruit of the poisonous tree, found illegally, in my opinion, from what I hear so far?
Well, he's got 15 charges. Wow. The top being a B felony for having 10 or more of these illegal weapons, which, to me seems like an arbitrary number anyway. I mean, even assuming that he was doing something nefarious with this, he's only got two hands, but there's these magic numbers that New York likes to make up when they're continuously moving the goalposts on these laws. And so if you've got 5 of these quote unquote assault rifles or illegal guns, that's a C felony. If you have 10 or more, that's a B felony. And you, as a police officer, I'm sure you know what that means. That means big numbers, potentially in state prison. And again, these are defined as violent felonies. So he'd be doing the majority of any sentence that he ends up getting. God forbid that he does get a sentence. I don't know exactly, but I want to say there's another 6 or 8 D felonies, a handful of E felonies, and then there's another C felony for the gun that they allegedly found in his center console.
So in New York State, a lot of people don't understand there are 3 different sections of the law, and I've only heard of it being imposed at least, I mean, this would be the 3rd time, honestly, in my career, where if you have 3 guns in your possession, and people got to remember that possession is, you have dominion or control over tangible property. So it doesn't have to be on your person. It can be in your vehicle, at your work locker, in a backpack that you own, etc. So dominion or control over tangible property, 3, 5, or 10 on your person or in your possession, if you will, then those could be charges for just having a gun. So one county I ran across years ago wouldn't allow anybody to put more than 3 handguns on their pistol license because they were reading that law so stringent, that part of the law. It's ridiculous. It's like, I mean, I guess they shouldn't look in my safe because, I got way more than 10.
Big problem too, Matt, is that there's so much confusion around the issue, and they're using that confusion to one, confuse people even more and scare people, frankly. I think it is being used as a deterrent. I think some measure of this is probably using me as an example to do that, unfortunately. The thing that kills us is, and Kevin and I saw that the state police had a list, rather, of people with violent criminal histories, with gun convictions, that they knew had guns in Albany. And it was a lengthy list. I wasn't on that list of people, and at least one or two of them were that they knew were selling online, parts and other things. They don't go after any of those people, but they go after me instead and waste a lot of time and money doing that.
Yeah.
And as you go through the discovery more, as
our time and money, by the way.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. And as you go through some of the more, the notes in the discovery, you're seeing like they were going to such great lengths and stretching so far to try to connect anything to me to make me look dangerous, and it was very hard for them, and you could see it in the notes.
They're trying to beat you down. They're trying to get you to comply. They're trying to get you to accept that plea deal, which is a win for them. And they're going to smooth it over and be like, "Oh, this is a win for you. Come on, take this plea deal," which is a tactic DAs will do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and on that list, and this should be no surprise to anybody, but there were local politicians on that list. A retired county court judge was on the list. Guess what? He's not a client of anybody's. They didn't investigate that. The sheriff's son was on that list. They didn't go after him. But here's Demetrio looking square in the face of potentially leaving his wife and children for a long time. This is it's lawfare at its finest, and we can't quite figure out who's pulling the strings, but we know that what's happening to him is not justice.
Yeah, this is a tragedy, man. I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm not in New York, so I can't speak to the laws there. But I quite often get into conversations with Matt about your state's worse than my state. Those kind of conversations. But I can definitely say, in Pennsylvania, it would seem and appear that in the larger cities, especially, they empower the actual criminal elements, and then they go after the law-abiding citizens who choose to be self-sufficient, and in whatever fashion that might be. I mean, try to dig a well on your property and see how quick the government crawls up your ass. So anyone doing anything firearms related is a lot of times scrutinized, and in your case, it would seem as if it was quite egregious, and that they're picking on a gun owner. They're picking on someone that they can make into an example, so it scares other people from taking on a level of responsibility to protect themselves. I mean, I know a lot of times when I get off on that rant, someone will say, "Hey, take your tinfoil hat on," but you only have to see one UFO to realize that there are aliens. You know what I mean? So
Well,
definitely sounds like a lawfare thing. Most certainly.
And for me, it's really concerning because, all I do is criminal defense. And this is one of, if not the most egregious case that I've seen. Because normally when you're talking about putting somebody away for this amount of time, they've done something where it hurts somebody, whether it be an adult or a child, or, they've done something to put their own interests above those of others. That's simply not the case here. They're just angry that he has guns that they think are bad, or, use whatever words you want, ghost guns or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, this guy has done nothing to hurt anyone in our community. And if you ask any of his family, any of his friends, all he does is help other people, and they're just making an example of him. My primary concern is Demetrio, but they're also sending a message to all other gun owners in this county, in this state, that if you don't get in line, you're next.
Yeah, the governor came out just, I think, last week and said that she was going to zero tolerance policy, cracking down on FFLs. And that was another reason why I kind of thought I got that call. Demetrio, tell us a little bit about your family. How old are your kids? How long you've been married? That kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I have two boys, 5 and 7-year-old boys.
Wow.
And it's meaningful for me because, just to give you a little background myself, I did not have a great child. And because of that, this whole situation, stings even more. I went to, I was raised by my uncle, who was a police officer. So I was raised in a law enforcement family. I was a former dispatcher in the city of Albany years ago. So I don't want to believe that it's certainly not in the city of Albany Police Department. I never experienced it, but I don't want to believe that the state police were capable of doing this kind of stuff. But you look at all the facts, Matt, and it's really hard not to come to the conclusion that everyone else is coming to, that this just doesn't make sense. And it is, I think, a lot of lawfare and a lot of confusion that they're using, again, just to scare people into submission. Unfortunately, I'm the stump they're using to grind.
Well, and the initial investigators who initially looked at Demetrio wanted to close the case, and whoever from the higher ups said, no, that's not going to work, and they gave it to two other investigators. And I mean, I'm assuming here, but it seems like they were like, you need to find something and get going on this, because when the two investigators that initially had it wanted to close it, that clearly wasn't good enough for whoever was making that call.
Do you think because you're in the Albany area, it might have a little bit of Queen Hail Hitler push from the above? I mean, you are right in the stomping ground of the governor.
I think that's possible. I'm disappointed with the district attorney's office, because frankly, they're making these decisions. It's not the attorney general. It's not from the state, even though the state police investigated it. And from a personal standpoint, and frankly, when Mr. Kinlan, who's our DA here, was running, I really thought good changes were coming. He's a former Marine, and has a long history as a defense attorney, and I expected that he would see through a case like this and recognize that we've got a good person, even if he disagrees with the guns that Demetrio possessed, or even if he supports the gun laws. We're not putting a bad person in prison, and that to me is the crux of the situation. That's where prison is useful. You put bad guys in prison, and you do something else with people who maybe need a lesson or whatever like that. And again, I'm not saying Demetrio does, but he doesn't belong in prison under any circumstances. I've told this story even to my very liberal friends who may support the gun laws, and they look at it and they're like, wait, there must be something more. And I'm like, there's not. I'm not giving you lawyer speak. I'm telling you everything there is. And there's layers upon layers that just don't make sense here.
So go into that a little bit. I mean, you mentioned earlier as far as the levels of charges and such. Can you go into specifically, what the guns were, or what he was in possession of? You said you mentioned ghost gun and such. Well, was it 80% lower that he milled out? I mean, what kind of things are making them look even more into this? Because I'm leaning more on the side the governor's pressuring the state troopers to push, charge everybody, give them a deal, but don't back down, kind of thing, because of how she is anti-gun, and it's an election season too.
Yeah, I mean, there were privately manufactured firearms, but there were also plenty of guns that he bought through FFLs. He passed, what was it, Demetrio, 22 background checks?
Yeah, filled out 22 or 23 4473s. No wait, never waited anything. Never, there was no delay ever. And some of them, one was as recent as 2024. I think I had one in 2024. And again, no wait. It wasn't, it wasn't like I was just compiling guns to, I'm an artist as well. I also taught myself AutoCAD and made excavators for my children, and little train modules and custom parts for their bikes. And so, we have a picture of my living room full of, they put that big picture of all my firearms together. 75% of that table were registered firearms, ARs and long guns, 1022s. And a lot of
that's all
1022 ARs were AR-50 or Ghost ARs. They were 1022s. They're rimfire guns. I don't know if just to make the public aware, like they're good for like getting squirrels out of your trees.
Woodchuck. I got a woodchuck. I'm trying to get my
scaring rabbits off. You're not going to do much.
And these creeps were surveilling him. They were going in like apartment complex dumpsters that were marked as private, that were on posted property, and they didn't find anything that was related to Demetrio. They just came up with the conclusion that this stuff came from Demetrio, when there's 48 other people living in that apartment complex, and Demetrio doesn't even live there. But they went in there and they just jumped to conclusions. They found a target and then they filled in the blanks after that.
Yeah, that's shitty law work. What I mean, I don't know. I'm at a loss. 22 background checks over multiple years.
Yes.
And then and you can build your own firearms here in New York State. If you buy a strip lower receiver, you can build it. Now it's got to be New York compliant, so there is that. And I'm not sure if you guys wanted to allude to that aspect of it. It can't be a handgun unless that gets added to your license, and you really can't do that without going through an FFL or possibly the sheriff's or the pistol office in your county if they would process that. But most of them tell you to go to an FFL to do that paperwork. So there are some stipulations, but you can build your own firearm in New York State with a serialized part that you've done a 4473 background check on. So,
well, to go even further than that, actually, 7 months after my arrest, Alvin Bragg himself filed an amicus brief in SDNY, and there's an interesting paragraph in there that talks about ghost guns and the privately manufactured stuff. And I think the paragraph reads something like, and I don't quote me, but I can pull it up. But it reads something like, although the manufacture of ghost guns or ghost gun parts is not currently prohibited or illegal in New York State, we believe enhancement of possession legislation would further curb this activity, or something to that effect. And then it lists a couple of bills that actually never pass, and if we check the status of them currently, they're dead. Mm-hmm. So in their own words, it's not prohibited or illegal to manufacture your own firearms as long as they comply with the federal rule, which is they have to be detectable by metal or X-ray and contain metal and plastic parts, right? I didn't have any all-plastic firearms that shoot plastic ammunition that weren't detectable by metal or X-ray. In fact, I didn't have any switches. I didn't have any bump stocks. I didn't have any FRTs. I didn't have any rapid-fire devices.
Good to know.
Yeah, I didn't have any of that stuff.
No silencers.
Negative. Yeah, none of that. This was true, and I was like putting my own designs on a lot of this stuff too. It wasn't like I was just making these to like market or sell anywhere. I wasn't going to protest. I wasn't, yelling online about ghost guns. I wasn't, the guy with the balaclava, making anonymous videos. Like I really try to wrap my head around what could have made me a target for them other than it was some kind of personal thing, right?
You bought shit on eBay.
Well, that and that's another thing too. When it's funny because if you read the warrant application, the parts that they refer to is like a Ruger 1022 10-round compliant long gun mag, right, and a spring, a Glock spring, not like a part that would be conducive to the operation of the firearm, like a
converted to full auto or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. This is like a meaningless part, So, but the way that they portrayed me to everyone above them was that I was this large-scale trafficker without any evidence or accusations, by the way. And there's even not anything in the discovery that alludes to that. And they've never charged me with that. So I don't know where any of that, the media stuff came from other than it either came from the state police or the DA. I'm leaning towards it probably came from the DA. And it's really just to inflict maximum damage. Like, you're right. It's really just like to beat you into submission, it seems,
We interviewed our local DA here in Onondaga County, New York, Fitzy, and one of the things, talking to him in the past, and he's reached out to me on cases to ask questions and, kind of be a subject matter expert for some stuff. One of the things that kind of he had said was, I asked him over drinks one time, would you agree with the national standard or the national percentage, 98% of cases are plea deals? And his response was, yes, if you take into consideration that 1/3 of the cases that come across their desk they don't even look at because they don't think it can win it. They don't have the resources or the time to prosecute it. So they just kind of ignore those ones and don't charge people. And then the 98%, they throw a good, sweet plea deal to try to get them to take it, and they get a win, and the people get a plea deal. So 2% of cases actually go to trial. That was pretty astounding to me that, that was the case, even, with what I do, but still it's, it's the other side of the coin, if you will.
So where exactly are you at with this? You had alluded that the court proceeding is going to happen in a couple days, a couple weeks?
August 17th, we begin jury selection, and the trial will continue that week. And I would believe likely into that following week. This should, I mean, we have a few things that we're working on to attempt to get some help for Demetrio here in the short term, but I would anticipate, barring some miracle, that this case is going to go to a jury before the end of the month.
And I'm still flabbergasted that the judge hasn't thrown it out based on lack of standing, or even in the pretrial evidentiary hearing where if they presented, they're like, "This is what we got." And I'm just, who's the judge?
Not only didn't throw it out, it's Judge Andra Ackerman, Albany County Court judge, and she didn't throw it out, but she also didn't even give us the hearings that. Frankly, I mean, I don't love this as an argument, but I think Demetrio's in a very good position for appeal should he be convicted. But the issue with that is it's very likely, if he needs to appeal, that he's going to be appealing from prison. So, and I know I already hit it, but it's so crazy to me because this district attorney's office, this judge, have had much more violent cases with real victims where the people have had multiple arrests, multiple violent incidences, and they're either being offered or being given less time than Demetrio's being offered on his very first offense in. I forget exactly. How old are you, Demetrio? Like 40 something years
44.
old?
Yeah, 40.
Yeah. He's never been in trouble before.
Well, I'd guess to be as optimistic as possible, I think it's probably best that you are having a jury trial here, because that may give you the opportunity to sway some people and get them to see the man, not just what the state is painting him to be.
We don't really have a choice at this point because they've rescinded all my plea offers right now. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Demetrio was working for a company at the time, National Grid, which you guys probably know. I think you have that out in Syracuse as well. Yep. But and there was a lot of controversial things that he was having to do. I can have him explain that. But one of the things, and I don't know if this is leading to these offers or anything like that, but the prosecutor who's prosecuting him lived in the neighborhood where Demetrio was working for National Grid and having certain property disputes that he can explain a little bit further.
Sure, yeah. So Grid, I'm sure you heard, Matt, about a lot of the UTV four-wheeler trespassing accidents Grid was having, and they were getting sued left and right for people dying on the lines that weren't supposed to be there. Part of the initiative I was working on was an encroachment initiative, going and working with landowners to remove those things out of the high voltage transmission lines that Grid owned in fee, that they actually owned. It wasn't an easement. Like, they bought that property, and had to be X amount of feet wide, the corridor, so that it could maintain a safe distance for the transmission lines. God forbid they arc to the right conditions. One neighborhood particularly I was working, there was 8 homes, and at least half of them we had dropped cease and desist letters on in my name on Grid letterhead. And the neighbors kept referencing their neighbor attorney who told them they didn't have to comply because it was an easement. And they did, unless you're in real estate, it's tough to understand what that means when they're saying the property is owned in fee, that it's not an easement, you can't use it. Grid was successful in mitigating all of those, and some of the people had to sign memorandums of understanding. They were obviously not thrilled about it because they had been using this property as their own for a number of years, and not been bothered about it. The neighbor,
Go
ahead, Kevin.
That attorney that he's referring to is the very attorney that's prosecuting his case at this point.
I smell something.
That's one hell of a coinky dink.
Yeah, it sounds like a conflict to me too. On top of that, and
that's part of what we're doing right now is we're making a motion because Demetrio was looking at some of the neighbors to see perhaps if there was some way that we could connect it to this case, and not even looking. And when he was looking at the property maps, he saw the prosecutor's name, and we showed that to her because we just wanted to say, hey, we may be using this in trial. And she kind of lost it and rescinded all offers. So we're in the process of moving for her to be taken off the case at this point.
Absolutely.
I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen, although it definitely should, because she immediately rescinded all offers and started a new investigation into Demetrio at that point, subpoenaing all of his Google records and search history and things like that. And I can assure you that the property map that he got is publicly available. You just need to go to the right website, and you can see everybody who lives in that neighborhood.
Yeah, most of them are here in Onondaga. You can do that too.
Yeah.
So, what's the prosecutor, the DA, ADA? I'm assuming ADA because you said the DA is a former Marine.
The DA is Lee Kinlan. The prosecutor is I don't know exactly what her title is. She's not the chief. She's the second below the chief. Her name is Jessica Blaine Lewis, and she's the one that's been handling the case throughout the whole process. But it's starting to feel more personal than it should be, coming from a district attorney's office.
Yeah, it seems like it's more now retribution. Maybe even from the start it was retribution, and now it's just doubling down even more so, which definitely sounds like a conflict of interest. And and I'm surprised that the judge too is not seeing this stuff. Overloaded. Vote of no confidence because the judge sucks, which there's a lot of them out there that do.
Well, I mean, it's part of the problem with having elected judges. Everybody thinks they're more important and that people are paying attention more than they do, and it's always, they think, unpopular to dismiss cases. But you're not in that position to be popular, and you shouldn't be worried about being reelected. You should be worried about doing justice. And if you do that, you've done good work. And I mean, their terms are 10 or 12 years anyway. So, I mean, it's not like Demetrio's case is going to make or break her next election cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do you have a GoFundMe or some way to help fuel the defense war chest?
I don't at the moment. There is somebody reached out to me today actually and asked my permission to set one up. So that is being done now. Once that's done, I'll absolutely get that link over to you guys for sure. I appreciate that.
And one of the things that we really want is people, whether it be calling the district attorney, calling their politicians, I mean, I don't know if it works anymore or not. I'm very disheartened in New York, and I'm bothered by what I'm seeing almost every day. But the politicians, the DAs, they all want to keep their jobs. So if they start feeling some pressure, if they start feeling some heat, they may reconsider their position. And I would hope that in the face of this information, that anybody with half a brain would say, this guy does not deserve prison. You can debate what might be a possible punishment if you agree with the law or don't agree with the law. I of course do not, but I don't think anybody with any sort of common sense would say Demetrio needs to go to state prison and be away from his family for the next decade.
Looking that way to me too.
So anybody who listens, we would appreciate the support. We would appreciate you being vocal, calling whoever you think might be able to help. We're in Albany County, but this is a state law, and all of our politicians are involved in making these laws, and then the district attorney himself is an elected position, and they have phone lines.
Yeah. If citizens call in, like calling in, they take note to that. If you send them an email or something that has some value, but if you actually call or actually go down and visit them, it really means something. So those of you that live in New York State, by all means, reach out, especially if you're in Albany County.
Yeah, for sure.
I suppose if you're not in New York State, making a call would be a good gesture, but ultimately they care most about their constituents, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because unfortunately, elected officials generally only care about becoming re-elected officials, and that's
they care about the votes, maybe not the constituents, but they care about the votes.
That's absolutely true. Yes,
very true, Kevin. Super. Well, Once again, sorry to hear you're going through this, and we'll do what we can to get the word out for sure. Let us know about the GoFundMe page. Once you have that up, we'll get that promoted out there for you as well.
Oh, keep up the great work, Kevin, and Demetrio. Good luck, man. Chin up and
really true,
and have faith in your lawyer, and have faith that some people are going to help move that needle.
Yeah, absolutely. I got full faith in Kevin and Adam. These guys are incredible. They've been instrumental in my own well-being the past couple of months, especially. I got the right people, 100%.
Good.
Well, prayers okay. Inbound.
Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate you having us on.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe, guys.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
You as well.
This is Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Macro.
Thanks for watching the show.
Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time,
adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.